Welcome, friends. It's nighttime here, and my kids are finally asleep. But before I can head off to bed, I need to head even further down the Duggar rabbit hole, taking a look at testimony of Bobby Holt, a close Duggar friend who testified at Josh's trial, but also taking a look at the comments and responses Bobby and her husband made on social media following the verdict, giving us even further insight into the community and issues surrounding the Josh Duggar case. Hi friends! So happy you're here with me, and I'm feeling extra happy because my littlest runt kitten is finally doing better. Thanks to all your comments, suggestions, emails, and some research, I was able to get this kitten to a good vet about 2 hours away from us, but we made it. He got a special shot that he desperately needed, and he is starting to thrive. So, do me a favor and subscribe so you can keep up with this little kitten's journey, and the more subscribers means the better treats I can order from Amazon. Hi friends! If you're watching this video, do me a favor and subscribe to my channel so you can keep up with my kittens and so that I can see my subscriber count continue to go up. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Jim and Bobby Holt are longtime friends of the Duggars. Jim Holt, born January 17, 1965, is an American Baptist minister and a conservative Republican politician from Springdale in northwest Arkansas. Holt was first elected to the Arkansas House of Representatives in the 2000 general election. He served in the House from 2001 to 2003. He sponsored a bill designed to prohibit the teaching of theory evolution in Arkansas public schools. Holt was elected to the Arkansas Senate in the 2002 election and served there until December 31, 2006. In 2004, Holt was the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate, but he was defeated by the Democrat Blanche Lincoln. He's run a couple of other times, and he's been defeated. During his entire political career, his wife, Bobby Holt, was by his side, staying home with the children and raising them in their conservative faith. Bobby and Jim had 11 children. Reportedly, Bobby was very close with Michelle Duggar, especially in the 90s and in the early 2000s. They raised their kids together. They went on vacations together, especially ski trips. They supported and helped one another in their political and familial ambitions. The Duggars donated money to Holt's many campaigns. Bobby Holt recently said her daughter, Kaylee Holt, actually dated or courted with Josh Duggar in the early 2000s, particularly 2003. At the time, Josh and Kaylee were 14 years old. In the early 2000s, the families were all attending church together at a place called Grace Fellowship Church. During the time of Counting On, the second revival show of the Duggar family, rumors began to swirl openly about the relationship between the Holts and the Duggar family. They no longer appeared close. They stopped attending the same church. The public didn't know it yet, but in some like-minded, fundy circles, people knew there was a serious beef between the Holts and the Duggars. Rumors raged about Josh and Kaylee, because at the time, it was blasphemous to think Josh Duggar had been in a dating situation so young and at the very beginning of the show, and that it was never acknowledged, along with the constant undercurrent of family guidelines about dating with a purpose. What would be the purpose at age 14? Were they going to get married? Was this some kind of betrothal? Back then, it was all just a whisper in the lost comments of places like Reddit. For their part, the Holts seemed to be remaining quiet. We never heard any public statements about what we would later find out they knew about the secrets in the Duggars' closet. Kaylee grew up, got married, and currently has 5 kids with the man who she claims is the love of her life. She has Instagram that features a lot of pictures and talk about her strict exercise regimen. Little did the Holt family know what was to come down the line for them. Back in December, during the pre-trial hearings for Josh Duggar's CP case, we suddenly heard that both Jim Bob Duggar and Bobby Holt were being called to speak in front of the judge. Casual onlookers were taken aback. Who was Bobby Holt? Why was she being called at Josh's trial? What was she going to say? Would it make it in front of the jury? Little did we know, Bobby would blow up the case and the public perception of the Duggars beyond the scandals we'd already been made aware of. In December, at the pre-trial hearing, Bobby came to the stand and stood strong in her truth. The following transcript is created using the podcast called Sojo Files. Sojo Files is a podcast put together by a local woman in Arkansas. She has a strong interest in local crime and trials. She attended the Duggar trial in person every day, took extensive notes to the best of her ability, and recorded her notes for a podcast. She gives us the disclaimer that what she shares cannot possibly be word for word. And I am going to do a summary of her notes of Bobby's testimony based upon this podcast now. Check out the Sojo Files. It's a really cool podcast, and I'm sure she'll be there for the sentencing as well. It's the best place to get unbiased information about what's going on with the Duggars. She will be attending the sentencing, I'm sure. All right, so before I get started with Bobby's testimony at the pre-trial hearing, I want to give you some background. Bobby is testifying about 2 dates. One was in 2003, and the second was in 2005. In 2003, Josh and Kaylee, Bobby Holt's daughter, were courting. And on the date in 2003, Josh comes to Bobby and her husband and tells them some information about the fact that he's been SMing his sisters. He tells her this because his parents have told him and have made it clear that he's going to have to break off the relationship with Kaylee. So he's coming to her in 2003, and she's sharing in her testimony what he had to say. The second date in 2005 is obviously after they received the original information in 2003. In 2005, Josh came to live with the Holts for a period of time while they were living in Little Rock, Arkansas, and her husband was working in the Senate. He came to live with them, and basically Bobby says they allowed him to come live with them because they wanted to work with him, help him, and give him another chance to perhaps build a relationship with Kaylee. And so she talks about how he then, in 2005, expands upon what he said in 2003. And that's what she's testifying about, and the judge is trying to decide whether or not her testimony will be allowed in the case. We know now that it was. And the prosecution and defense are arguing back and forth. The defense is trying to prove that Bobby's testimony should not be given in court because it should be covered by confidentiality within the church. Okay, so getting started. This is the pre-trial hearing before the trial begins. Bobby Holt is sworn in by the judge. Let me give a disclaimer. It may be difficult for some people to listen to what I'm about to read as Bobby's testimony, as it can be somewhat graphic, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear all of that about what happened. I think it's important that I hear and speak the truth. It is much more severe than what Jim Bob Duggar ever shared with us publicly, and I think it's important to know. It's important for the victims to know. It's important for us to know when we're making judgments about what's going on in this case. So, once again, Bobby Holt is sworn in by the judge. First, Bobby Holt admits that her daughter and Josh were dating in 2003, and her daughter's name is Kaylee Holt. Prosecution. Did Josh tell you that he thought this would end their relationship? And they're talking about the SM scandal. Bobby. Jim Bob did. Now defense comes in and they start arguing that Jim Bob was an elder of the church. So this conversation was privileged and we shouldn't talk about it anymore, so on and so forth. Then the prosecution comes over and starts arguing that since women are not allowed to hold a position of elder in the church, Bobby Holt should be allowed to testify about what she heard in 2003. They were there as parents of Kaylee, not there in a church capacity. Okay, so the judge steps in and he decides he's going to admit Bobby's testimony now. He wants to hear about it. He talks about why, and he just makes an argument that he needs to hear this testimony. Prosecution. What did Josh tell you about touching minor females? Okay, and I just want to let you know that all of the victims are going to be identified as Jane Does. Those of us in the know who they are. I'll leave it up to you to mostly research some of that. Bobby. Jane Doe 4. He touched during Bible time, and he touched Jane Doe 1 through 3 previously. Prosecution. When did Josh tell you about touching Jane Doe 4? Bobby. He said it happened that day in 2003, and he touched her V area over the clothes with his hands. Prosecution. He's over 3 years older than Jane Doe 4? Bobby. Yes. Prosecution. He admits he touched other minor females? Bobby. Yes. Prosecution. Did he tell you how long he's been doing this? Bobby. Since he was 12 years old. Prosecution. Who did Josh admit to touching? Bobby. Jane Doe 1 to 3. Prosecution. What did he confess to doing to Jane Doe 1? Bobby. Touch her chest and V over the clothes. Prosecution. More than once? Bobby. I can't remember. Prosecution. What happened with touching Jane Doe 2? Bobby. Same as Jane Doe 1. Prosecution. Did he use his hands? And basically Bobby says yes. She goes on to say it was the same with Jane Doe 3. 1, 2, 3 were all like the same situation and scenario. Prosecution. Give the court context of when. Bobby. Jane Doe 1 to 3 were all sometimes sleeping and sometimes awake. Prosecution. Did he state he touched them on multiple occasions? Bobby. Yes. Okay, then Bobby, I don't have this word for word, but Bobby basically says in February 2002, he says he touched Jane Doe number 1, and she went and told her parents, and then Josh confessed to them. Prosecution. Did he continue to touch after this? Bobby. I don't know. Prosecution. March 30th, 2003, this is the first event we're talking about, he touched Jane Doe number 4. Bobby. Yes. Prosecution. March 30th, 2003, all victims would have been 3 years younger than Josh Duggar. Bobby. Yes. Prosecution. Did Josh tell you anything else? Bobby. Yes, but not involving the girls. Prosecution. Someone else, not a sister? Bobby. Yes. Girl was not 3 years younger than Josh. Okay. So that's the first part of her testimony. And now they're going to move on to the second event. And basically they're talking about how January 2005 through March or April 2005, the Holt family was in Little Rock at our home. In Little Rock, where we stay, when the Senate is in session, my husband was working in the state Senate. And Josh stayed with us. So she kind of gives this background. We're up in 2005 now. Prosecution. Why did he stay with y'all? Bobby. Hoping the kids would get married and that we would be able to help him. And then Bobby goes over being an elder in the church and that she was at the same church as the Duggars and women were not allowed to be elders. Prosecution. Did you hope Josh and Kaylee could work stuff out and get married? Bobby. Yes. We love Josh. Prosecution. Tell the court what Josh said that night, and this is the second time in 2005. Bobby says, he explained March 30th, 2003 with Jane Doe. So it's 2005, but he's explaining the first event more. It was Bible time, and she sat in his lap, and then there's silence. Bobby is clearly upset. Prosecution offers her tissues, and she is crying. She says, thank you, and I'm sorry. All right, now she says, he put his hands under her clothes and pants and touched her V. I asked, did he just touch or put hand inside? He said he did. Prosecution. What did he tell you about Jane Doe number 1? Bobby. He told me he went to her at night, tried to touch her under the blanket, and she hit him. He said she snitched on him. Okay, then the prosecution goes on to ask other random questions about what Jim Holt knew about what was going on with Josh. But basically, the defense comes in here and says this is all hearsay. The judge agrees, so the prosecution drops this line of questioning. And he hands it over to the defense. This is where the defense just tries to make a whole argument by asking Bobby questions about the fact that, like, she was a member of the church. He's trying to say that she's acting in the capacity of an elder in the church. She pushes back against that. She's not allowed to be an elder. They weren't in the church when Josh confessed to them. They didn't tell him, like, that this was going to stay private. So she really pushes back against it, but they're trying to make that argument. And I'm only going to highlight what the defense specifically asks Bobby about Jim Bob and Michelle's response to all of it. And this is about in 2005 when the event had already occurred. Josh came to stay with the Holts, and basically Bobby's saying that she called Michelle and Jim Bob to tell them that Josh had divulged more information. Defense: you told the Duggars what Josh said while he was at your house? Bobby: yes, I tried to tell them and talk to them, but they didn't want to hear it. Defense: did you tell anyone else? Bobby: yes. Defense: when? Bobby: well, something else happened that made Josh leave our home. Interesting, right? This is kind of a side note. We still don't have confirmation on what happened. Again, Bobby says, well, something else happened that made Josh leave our home. Defense asks, did you write notes? Bobby: no. The defense goes back and forth with Bobby for a while. I didn't write all of it down because most of it didn't seem that important to what we're talking about. They're just once again trying to make the argument that she's there as a church member, so it shouldn't be brought up in the case. And they hand it back over to the prosecution, and the prosecution now asks about this situation. Prosecution: in 2005, something more happened that made people aware? Bobby: yes. Now, defense objects. They are like, this line of question isn't within the scope. We're not going to go down this road. And the prosecution drops it. So we have never had any confirmation about what happened in 2005 at the Holt's house in Little Rock, Arkansas, that made Josh have to leave the home and go back home to be with his parents. A lot of people have said it was accessing P on a computer. Definitely a possibility. And then the witness is excused. Next, Jim Bob Duggar was called to the stand. He was asked a series of questions about Josh and his siblings' interactions during the early 2000s regarding the SM of several of his daughters. Jim Bob acted enraged and somewhat unhinged. He denied remembering anything about the situation. He spoke out of turn to the judge and made comments about all of it just being rumors from In Touch magazine. He left the stand without contributing anything to the court. It turns out Bobby has a much better memory about the health and safety of the Duggar girls than Jim Bob Duggar. Okay, so I have decided to focus on this testimony, which was given at the pre-trial. I'm not going to go specifically into the testimony that was given at the trial because it is very much the same. She doesn't talk about, so much the extra things about what happened in 2005 that made Josh leave, which is why I focus on the pre-trial information. But she says a lot of the same stuff during the trial. Some have called Bobby Holt a hero due to this testimony. Others were disgusted. She let Josh back into her home and she let her kids around him. She was potentially going to allow Kaylee to date him again. Thank God for Kaylee, that didn't happen. I hope she's in a healthier relationship now. A few days later, Bobby Holt spoke at trial and repeated pretty much the same things over again, except she also appeared to take a stab at Jim Bob Duggar by saying, "You don't forget something like this," when the defense questioned her memory. Following her testimony, it's been reported that Jim and Bobby stayed in the courtroom to watch the trial. They sat next to Clint, whose testimony I've highlighted in another video. He was the techie friend of Josh who was called to the stand to testify about Josh's knowledge of computers. In December, when all of this testimony happened, I could barely believe it. How could all of this have been happening behind the scenes of the Duggars TV show, specials, and all that fame? How did all of it stay a secret with so many people involved? What more do the Holts know? I find it so interesting, and I think you can tell by the content of my channel, I have a deep need to understand more about the truth with this family. In that pursuit, I want to share more comments and statements from Bobby, Jim, and Kaylee Holt, which came out on different platforms after the trial. Okay, so here we go, down the rabbit hole, friends. So starting with a post from Bobby Holt and Jim Holt, I believe this was done on Facebook, and it's basically about being grateful for all the support they received from their friends and family and community during and after the trial. Bobby says, "I just want to say how grateful we are for all the love and support you have given us over the last couple weeks. It truly means the world. Please continue to pray for us as we move forward in this phase of life where we can finally hold our heads up and feel heard and believe. 18 plus years, we've been trying to get people, authorities, friends, family to listen to what we've known, and finally someone has. So it truly means the world to us, and we are so grateful to you all. Please continue to pray for the Duggars as well, especially the children, Anna and her children. They need your support as well. And to those who have not had a voice, who have not been heard or believed, we spoke for you. You are loved, you are strong. Never let anyone silence you. Hold your head high and know we are cheering for you. We love you all." This is quite interesting for me. This is the first time I've heard from the Holts or read anything about how the Holts have been trying. They say, and in a couple of other posts, they say they have been trying to get information out about what happened to the girls back in 2003 for a long time, and they've been concerned about the girls and Josh for a long time. Next, this has also been taken from Facebook, and it's the words of Bobby Holt, and it kind of it makes you think that there was a big cover-up, bigger cover-up than we realize going on. So a commenter on Bobby's post says, "Better late than never. You have a voice and using it the way it needs to be used. Keep on keeping on." And Bobby Holt responds, "I'm not sure what the first part meant, but if you think I didn't do what I was supposed to do, I did. I can't make any authority do what they are supposed to do." So here Bobby seems to be indicating that she went to the authorities and she tried to get something done about this case. Here we have another post from Facebook, and it seems that Bobby Holt is saying that they tried multiple times to get Josh held responsible for his actions, and there was actually going to be a trial about it that never came to fruition. So Bobby Holt writes to someone, I'm not sure what they said, but Bobby Holt says, "You are right. Remember the trooper he was taken to," assuming this is about Josh. "This was in 2004. He did nothing because Jim Bob lied to him and set it up. We didn't find this out until the end of 2006. Then he was taken to authorities again, the third time. That's when there was supposed to be a trial, but the prosecuting attorney dropped it because our family was subpoenaed to testify." Interesting. We've never heard about this trial that was supposed to take place against Josh. Bobby Holt says, "Again, you seriously don't know the truth. Not everything you read on the internet is the truth." Very interesting. Bobby might be calling me out there because, I'm just kidding, because I read a lot of things on the internet, go down all these rabbit holes, and basically Bobby seems to be saying that their family was trying to have Josh held responsible for what happened and maybe get some help for him. Very interesting. Here is Bobby Holt again on Facebook talking about a trial we knew nothing about that supposedly was going to take place in 2007. "You have no idea how many times it has been taken to authority. When I say they didn't do their job, I truly mean they didn't do their job. Did you know that there was going to be a trial for the abuse in 2007? Did you know my husband and our daughter was subpoenaed for that trial? Did you know the prosecution dropped it because my family was going to testify? Please stop spreading misinformation when you clearly do not know the truth." All right, now here we have Bobby and Jim Holt's response on Facebook after Josh was found guilty at the trial. And they write, "Guilty on both counts. Justice for Jane Doe's. God is a God of justice. Finally, someone believed us." So it does sound like they're making it clear that the Holts wanted Josh to be found guilty. They thought that, he needed to be held responsible for what he's done, and that they really do care about the girls, Jane Doe's 1 through 4, who were very negatively affected by all of this. And here we have Bobby making a comment again on Facebook about her relationship with the Duggars. A person comments and asks, "Does this affect your relationship with the family? I hope people aren't mad at you." I don't think that's what's most important, but I get what they're saying. And Bobby responds, "Oh my, we haven't hung around them since 2006. So we're getting that conclusive evidence that there was a split between the Duggars and the Holts. The Holts were, they're stating that they weren't happy. They were trying to get justice for the girls. They were done with the Duggars and that church. Okay, I'm going to share a couple of comments that Jim and Bobby have made regarding Anna. Okay, we can take a look at this. This is Jim Holt. I believe it's on Instagram. And someone asked, "Can you please get through to Anna? This is beyond negligent." And Jim Holt family responds, "Oh, I wish I could. Truly I do. But she was told we are the bad guys, the dangerous ones. She would never listen to us." Craziness. I can't believe he commented. It's sad where Anna is. That she is in a situation where she can't even talk to people who have any kind of different opinion than the Duggars. Okay, and then lastly, Kaylee Holt put out a comment on her Instagram. She said, "Many of you know about my past relationship, and that didn't really get talked about. It was kept quiet for most of my life until recently. I try to keep parts of my past more private and just talk about my life now," Kaylee, who is married, said. And Kaylee basically goes on to say that she's sad about her friend from childhood being found guilty of these terrible crimes, and she prays for him. And that's all that Kaylee does to address the situation on her Instagram. I find all of this so very interesting. My true feelings about Bobby go like this. Likely, Bobby and Jim Holt were two mostly regular people, albeit very conservative, caught up in a complicated situation with the Duggars. They subscribe to the same faith, yes, but it appears from all of the evidence in this video, they took more of a measured or balanced perspective on how the faith should be practiced. Certainly, since these events took place, we have evidence that they distanced themselves from the Duggars and somewhat from the doctrine. However, it's clear Bobby was willing to welcome Jack back into their home after she was made aware of the truth of his behaviors, and this can be highly concerning. However, I'm not sure what protection she was putting in place and exactly what her motives were. I'm actually more greatly concerned why the Duggar parents felt it was okay to let Josh go stay with the Holts, considering his pattern of inappropriate behaviors with children. If I was his parent, he would definitely not be allowed to go and stay alone with the family who have children. I think this is actually even more dangerous and inappropriate on the part of Michelle and Jim Bob than necessarily the Holts. After the trial, we've seen Bobby made some statements seemingly indicating she tried to go out and speak to more authorities to have something done about Josh and what happened to the girls, but nothing ever came of it. If this is true, I have some increased respect for her. I think that this was the right thing to do, and maybe it took a little while to realize it. I believe Bobby Holt cared for and even loved some of the Duggar children, including Josh. From her end, it was likely hard and complicated to know how to respond to Josh's abhorrent behavior. I'm glad she came forward for the trial. I'm glad that what she knows is now out in the open, specifically for the victims, because they deserve to know the truth, or at least most of the truth. Jim Holt has said 2 of the victims have thanked them. Maybe there will be a reconnection of sorts with these victims in the future. Meanwhile, I can't help but wonder what's happened in Jim Bob's life that makes him so staunchly set on protecting Josh at all costs. What is the true relationship between Josh and his father? It seems like there may be even more behind-the-scenes information I've yet to understand. So what do you guys think about Bobby and everything that happened at the trial and what the Holts knew, what else they might know? Here's a little kitten to clean your palate after that very difficult video. I'm so glad that you're here with me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you head off to bed and head down your own rabbit hole.